This is Fight Night on talkSPORT, the home of boxing here in the UK. The home of boxing in the United States for many a year was Las Vegas, and that's the scene of what many would say is the biggest fight of the year, maybe the biggest fight of the century so far, which is Canelo against Terence "Bud" Crawford at the Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas. And it's, before we talk about the fight itself, Spenny, for boxing in America, this is massive, and it has to be a commercial success, or I think Las Vegas begins to be really sidelined as a major venue.
Absolutely, John. I think that for so many years now, Las Vegas, America, has been the mecca of boxing. We've seen a big turning in the tide since the investment of Saudi Arabia, Riyadh season, Turkey Al Sheikh, and all the fights now going over to Saudi Arabia. But, I mean, to be fair to Turkey and Riyadh season, they are travelling. We've got the big fights that go on here, and we've got the big fights like this one.
He's putting the money up for this,
absolutely. You know, which has been instrumental in making all these big fights, the fights that we would only have ever dreamed of, and we get now because of the investment of Saudi Arabia and Riyadh season. So you have to salute them for that, you know, for bringing these fights to the forefront. And this one is a fantasy fight, a dream fight that we never thought would come to fruition, but has. I mean, we've got a guy here that has moved through the ranks in Terence Crawford from lightweight, 4-weight division world champion up to super welterweight, going in against Canelo Alvarez, a 4-weight world champion, going from welterweight up to super middleweight. Two of the best to ever do it, and we get the dream fight.
Canelo, though, he just keeps on doing it, doesn't he? He's been around such a long time now, pro for 20 years. You know, he was fighting for a living when he was 15 years old, now 35, and the only two people to have bettered him are Mayweather and Bivol. Mayweather, who clearly was absolutely in his prime when he fought Canelo, who probably became a better fighter for suffering that loss. And then Bivol, who I think was just physically too big for him. But Canelo, you know, he goes into this, even at the age of 35 and with so many miles on the clock, he goes in as quite a clear favourite with the bookies.
He does. And like you say there, you know, you highlighted the two losses there of Canelo Alvarez, and you go, Bivol was just too big and too smart, and Alvarez, you know, couldn't bridge that gap. And then you look at him when he lost to Floyd Mayweather. He was a young man, a 23-year-old man back then with inexperience against a seasoned world pound-for-pound star in Floyd Mayweather. So no disgrace in that, and he gave Mayweather a good fight as well. Take that out of the equation, and he's beaten everybody there is around there. So, yeah, there's a big argument that Canelo Alvarez starts the favourite going into this one because he's the super middleweight world champion. Bud Crawford jumping up to two weight divisions, you know, and he's jumped up a weight division before that as well, beating Errol Spence. You just look at it and go, it's a massive ask here for Terence Crawford. But something inside me tells me he wins, and we'll get into that later on.
Well, we'll talk about that in a minute. But in the meantime, you know, Canelo, as ever, has left no stone unturned. He's been training at altitude in Sierra Nevada, looking to get the maximum body stamina and preparation advantage. It's something that he's used to. And, of course, he's going to effectively be the home fighter because Tex-Mexers will be up in their numbers from Texas. Also, Hispanic fans from all around the United States. The fight is being made on Mexican Independence Day. I don't think you have to be a great crystal ball gazer to know where the bulk of the crowd is going to be rooting when they step out inside those ropes and their names are bellowed out by the ringside announcer afterwards.
Listen, even though the fight happens in America and Terence Crawford is American, it is going to be so pro-Mexican there, you know, because Canelo is accepted. He's like an adopted son there, and Mexican Independence Day, all of that goes so much in favour of Canelo Alvarez. You go, actually, the guy that's a four-division world champion and a superstar of the sport and American will start probably the fan favourite will definitely be Canelo Alvarez.
Yeah, definitely. And he's been training with somebody, sparring with a man who he thinks replicates Crawford's style in sparring many rounds against Yaron Ennis. And you know, there are those who say just physically and power-wise, despite all the amazing photographs you might have seen of Crawford's conditioning, when it comes down to power, strength and ability to close out a fight, Canelo's the man. You know, Mosley's said that. Amir Khan has said that. He's been in with both, and he says that just his size and his ability to control a fight when it really matters, that's the key.
Absolutely. Listen, I think Canelo is great at closing the space, you know, shutting down that space and letting those shots go. But as you said, John, he's been a pro 20 years now, and he's had to adjust and adapt his style in recent years, where he was a big combination puncher, a big body puncher, and puts his punches together in bunches. He doesn't do that anymore. He closes the gap and he throws those single hard blows and he looks for that shot. Terence Crawford isn't that guy to sit in the pocket. He's a smart operator, a smooth operator with a better boxing IQ than Canelo Alvarez. He switches effortlessly between orthodox and southpaw, boxes as well either way. He's a spiteful puncher with 31 of his 40 victories coming inside the distance. And you go, the only thing that separates these two right now, for me, is that Canelo is the bigger man. But that's the only thing that goes in Canelo's favour, because I think that Terence Crawford ticks all the boxes or wins in every other way by the manner that he boxes. So it's a fascinating one, because if Crawford can control the space the way I think he does, I think he gets a memorable victory. You've got to go back to Sugar Ray Leonard, Marvin Hagler. You know, when you look at guys jumping through the weights and pulling off a victory like that, this will be historic if he does that.
If. That's the big thing. If. Can he actually pull it off? You know, I mean, I've been over there and watched Canelo at close quarters. I saw him twice against Gennady Golovkin. You know, the first time he fought Golovkin, I definitely had Golovkin as a winner. I think he was robbed by pro-Hispanic judges in what is effectively Canelo's hometown as a fighter. Second time, I think there was also a pretty decent argument that Golovkin could have won the fight. I think he was bitterly disappointed, and Canelo was twice a little bit fortunate. And if this one goes the distance, as I think in all probability it will do, can you honestly see judges giving it to Terence Crawford, 2 years the older man, not a huge ticket seller? Can you see them giving it to him in Las Vegas over Canelo?
Listen, that is a great shout, because you go back to the Triple G days, which the two fights that you just highlighted there, and I'm with you. I thought that Triple G, Gennady Golovkin, he won both of those fights. For me, he won them. The first fight, for sure,
clearly.
He won quite clearly, and it didn't go his way, and it was on Mexican Independence Day, and it was in Las Vegas. Terence Crawford's got a lot to do to pull off the victory here, because he can't just nick this one. He's got to win it clearly. But here it is. Here it is. This is what I think. I think that if Crawford controls that space, he will win it clearly enough for the judges to have to give it to him. That's where I'm at with it.
Well, we will see. You know, I mean, there've been huge judging upsets before, haven't there? Remember Holyfield and Lewis and the massive outcry there was after that. And of course, it just paved the way for another massively lucrative rematch. And maybe there'll be, I'm sure there's been some sort of a rematch clause in the contract in this one. And maybe we'll just be seeing the first instalment where Canelo goes in the favourite, but maybe if he does lose this one, then of course we go back. Is it going to be repeat or revenge?
Absolutely. Listen, I think we're in this unique position with these two that you've got arguably pound for pound, number 1 and 2, whatever way that is determined is on next Saturday night. But I think they're arguably number 1 and number 2, and we could see again, and maybe again, because it could be that close and that controversial. Fascinating fight.
Well, we're going to be looking in more detail in a minute or two at just what Terence Crawford brings into the arena, into the confrontation. The outsider, the man from Nebraska. How's he going to do against Canelo, Saul Alvarez, the big one next weekend? We'll talk more about it after this break. And now for the next quarter of an hour or so, let's talk Crawford. Never above light middleweight, but now fighting at super middleweight against one of the legends of the sport, the dominant figure in that division for many a year. 42-0, though, Terence Crawford. strength and conditioning coach Chet Fortune has been looking after the champion in his build up to this. He's been saying that he's been strengthening his core muscle strength, his neck strength, because he's naturally going to be fighting a man who's bigger than him, and he won't look smaller when he gets into the ring. He says, in fact, that his preparations have been so precise that we've seen what he did against Spence when he produced what I thought was one of the most complete boxing performances I've seen in my many years at ringside. And he said that was part one. Now we're going to be watching part two.
The transformation is insane. I looked on Terence Crawford's Instagram earlier on, and he posted a picture of his transformation, and you see the muscle mass that he's put on. You just look at it and go, wow. Like, absolutely insane. He's actually bigger than Canelo Alvarez. He'll look bigger when they get into the ring because he has a slight height advantage over Alvarez. But the way that he is filled out, the way he's transformed his body is quite remarkable. It's insane.
Well, he certainly looks unbelievably ripped. There are going to be plenty of cynics out there who'll be raising an eyebrow and saying, can you do that just by conditioning, just by hard work?
Absolutely. Listen, the way these guys train, you got to remember they eat, sleep, drink, boxing. That's what they do. They get up in the morning, they're out running, you know, the training, the S&C conditioning, strength and conditioning sessions that they put in. John, it is their life, mate. They put in hours and hours of work, and that's how they transform the bodies the way they do.
They're both family men, aren't they? They've got a lot to fight for in terms of more than just boxing legacy. They're still looking to provide for their family for the rest of their days. Canelo's probably made so much money that it's not quite so much an issue for him, and you wonder whether he's going to have the hunger that he had earlier in his career. But Crawford hasn't had those huge paydays, even though he's undefeated in 42 fights. So he really does still have fighting athletic hunger.
Absolutely. Listen, both 4 weight division world champions. Terence Crawford is a 2 weight division undisputed champion, and he's looking to, you know, move into a 5 division world champion. It's quite extraordinary, really. And as you said there, I think, you know, when you ask yourself the question about Canelo Alvarez and you say, where does the motivation come from? Where do you find that from? You've been professional 20 years. You know, you've had a career where you've gone through the weight divisions. You've been the number one. Where do you find that hunger from? You know, that's what makes superstars, I suppose. You know, that's what drives him on. What drives him on is quite remarkable because the guy still trains like a challenger.
Yeah.
But you're right in what you say. For Bud Crawford, you go, this is a whole new scale, what he's going into right now, the money that he's going to be receiving now. And if he wins this one, I think he sails off into the sunset. I don't think we see him in the ring again. What
he did so extraordinarily, I thought, against Spence, what is it now, a couple of years ago, that fight, isn't it?
Yeah.
What he did so amazingly well was his economy of effort and of movement. You know, he's not fleet-footed in the way that Floyd Mayweather was, but he's so compact as a boxing stylist. He wastes so little, so when he comes into the closing rounds, he's not burning out, or at least he wasn't in that particular fight. Whether or not it's going to be a different kettle of fish against a bigger guy like Alvarez, we'll see. But it was his economy of movement, I thought, which was so remarkable.
That was the most complete boxing I've seen in a ring in my lifetime. I just looked at that, and those, you know, the judging of the distance, moving by inches, John, like you say, he was wasting absolutely nothing, but the timing was impeccable. The, you know, the ring control, the space control, everything he was doing, shot selection. He made a fight where, when they went into that fight, it was a 50-50 fight with Errol Spence at that time, and he made it easy, made it look so easy. And that, for me, was the one that if this fight would have been announced before that fight, I would have gone Canelo big time. But after watching that masterclass and one of the best performances I've ever seen in a boxing ring, the best performances that I've witnessed anyway, I can't go against Bud Crawford for that, even if he's moving through the weight divisions. Because I think every now and then, John, and you've been through a few eras where you've seen superstars. You're talking about your Leonards, your Hearns, you know, your Haglers.
Yeah, he'd have lived with them, though.
He would have lived with them. He's that good. And that's why I think he's going to stamp his position as number one fighter of this modern era by beating Canelo.
You know, I saw an interview. I do slightly more than just sit around watching YouTube all day, but I did see an interview with Mike Tyson, and he was saying, yeah, you've got to go with the bigger guy. You've got to go with Alvarez probably as the favourite and writers. But then he said, and he's a great student of boxing history as Tyson. And he said, let's not forget about a man called Homicide Hank. And that was Henry Armstrong in the late 1930s when he was featherweight, lightweight and welterweight champion simultaneously. He beat Barney Ross to take the title in 1938, the welterweight title. And then after that, he also became the lightweight champion, beating a guy called Lou Ambers. You know, I mean, maybe Sugar Ray Robinson was the best fighter of all time, but Henry Armstrong was right up there. Sugar Ray Leonard clearly right up there as well. But if Crawford pulls this off on Saturday night, I think there's a pretty cogent argument that he's the man.
Greatness doesn't come around very often. And I believe we've got it here with Terence Crawford. And I think we find that out next Saturday night for sure. I mean, Canelo Alvarez, what he's achieved in that ring and how dominant he's been for so many years. You look at him and you go, he's going to be remembered as one of the greatest to ever do it. And I think if Crawford pulls off the unthinkable and moves up weight divisions, 2 weight divisions, to beat a man that's been dominant for so long, he will take that reign as one of the greatest to ever lace him up.
Well, he's slightly the outsider, well, significantly the outsider in the British odds is Terence Crawford. But, you know, if we're going to break down the fight, it's one thing to say, right, Crawford's done this, he's done that. He was fantastic on that night. But to beat Alvarez, you know, technically, if you look at this, Crawford has all the timing, all the conditioning in the world. But how does he succeed where others like Billy Joe, like Amir, and like so many others who thought they had a great chance to go in there and outbox Canelo, but when it came to it and he was coming at them, they realised this is a different ball game and it ain't quite as easy as I thought. What does he have to do?
And here's the difference between the fighters that you've just mentioned there and Terence Crawford. You're talking about good fighters, great fighters, but we're talking about all-time greats here in what I think is Terence Crawford. And I think that Terence Crawford is incredible at controlling the space. He's brilliant on the front foot, he's very spiteful, and he's great on the back foot. But those inches, those small margins that we were talking about before make the difference between winning and losing in contests like this. Now, Canelo Alvarez has had to adapt his style over the years, and he now loads up with single shots. He looks to close the space. With Terence Crawford, he's great at controlling that space. He boxes equally out of the southpaw stance, which is the right-hand lead, as he does the orthodox stance, which is the left-hand lead. He actually switches up on the inside as well. He's great at short range, brilliant at mid-range, and he controls at the long range as well. And I think that how does Canelo Alvarez win this fight? Is by closing the space and pinning Terence Crawford down. But Crawford's too smart for that, too good for that. Bullying him. And I don't think he can do that because I don't think that Terence Crawford is that guy that could get bullied. I think he's that good. And I think that when he has to bite down on his gumshoe, and he will have to at times, I think he's got that in him to do that. I think he can go with him, he can trade with him, and he can. The difference is the punch output. Crawford will beat Canelo 3-1.
I'm loving this because there's going to be so many talkSPORT listeners out there right now hearing what you're saying and saying, come on, Spenny, you're trying to talk up the fight, trying to make it exciting, trying to make it one to really watch out for because you think, or rather it makes it a better fight if people think that Crawford's in with a real chance. But there's so many Canelo fans, the ones who harangued me for saying that Golovkin beat him. There's so many fans out there who say, get a life. This guy's going to win. Canelo will win.
Listen, that's what makes this fight so intriguing, so interesting. That I'm a big Crawford fan, and not just because I'm not speaking with my heart over my head here. I just broke it all down, and I just think that the only difference between these two right now, the only thing that separates these two right now is size. But if you look at the boxing IQ and everything else that goes on inside those ropes, Terence Crawford wins. Can he keep the ball off? Can he keep Canelo off for 12 rounds is the million-dollar question. If he can, and I believe he can, he wins a fight and wins it quite convincingly.
quick, get me my phone. I need to put money on this right now. I'm allowed to do that? Probably not. Other ways of spending your money are realistic alternatives, of course.
On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.